My relaxing weekend getaway to the Catskills was supposed to be a reset. I'm Clara, an architect, and the city's endless drone had finally worn me thin. I booked what looked like a charming, secluded Airbnb, picturing quiet hours with my sketchbook and fresh mountain air. The listing photos showed a rustic cabin, all exposed beams and cozy nooks. It seemed perfect. I arrived late Friday afternoon, just as the last light was fading from the sky. The air was cool, smelling of pine and damp earth. Self-check-in was easy, just a code for the lockbox. The host, an older woman named Martha, had left a sweet note on the counter, welcoming me and wishing me a peaceful stay. I unpacked quickly, made myself a cup of tea, and felt a rare sense of calm. That calm didn't last long. A few hours later, after night had fully fallen, I was sketching by the fireplace, trying to capture the way the light danced on the old brick. My eyes drifted to the wall beside it, covered in an aged floral wallpaper. There, almost camouflaged, was a faint seam, running floor to ceiling behind a large, antique bookshelf. It was barely visible, a hairline crack in the pattern, and I mentally filed it away as just another charming imperfection of an old house. Then a sudden, inexplicable chill snaked through the cabin, raising goosebumps on my arms. I pulled my sweater tighter, but the draft persisted, even though all the windows and doors were firmly shut. It seemed to emanate directly from the wall where I'd noticed the seam. A moment later, I started to hear it, a soft, rhythmic scratching, like fingernails dragging lightly across wood. It was so faint I questioned if I was imagining it. Every time I focused, it stopped. The silence that followed was always more unsettling than the sound itself. My calm evaporated. I couldn't shake the feeling. I kept listening, my heart starting to thump unevenly in my chest. The scratching returned, louder now, less like an animal and more like a deliberate, repetitive tap. It was unmistakably from behind that bookshelf. My nerves were already frayed. I tried to dismiss it, to tell myself it was just the old house settling, but a sudden, muffled thud from directly behind the wall silenced my rationalizations. That was it. My imagination or not, I had to know. The bookshelf was heavy, filled with dusty old books, but I managed to drag it away from the wall, scraping loudly against the wooden floor. Behind it, exactly where I expected, was a cleverly disguised door. It was flush with the wall, the floral wallpaper seamlessly matched, making it practically invisible unless you knew to look. There was no knob, only a small, keyhole-shaped indentation. It was locked. A wave of icy dread washed over me, but a stubborn need for answers, for proof, pushed me forward. I scoured the cabin, my eyes darting everywhere, searching for a hidden key. Under a loose floorboard near the fireplace, almost as if placed there to be found, I felt something cold and metallic. It was an old, rusty key. My hand trembled as I inserted it into the lock. It fit! The door creaked open, revealing a sliver of pitch black. A wave of musty, damp air, tinged with something sickeningly sweet, hit me. I hesitated for a moment, then, foolishly, shone my phone light into the darkness. It revealed a narrow, cramped crawlspace. The walls were uneven and rough, and as my light swept across them, I saw crude etchings, tally marks, dozens of them, and unsettling, childlike stick figures. My breath hitched. Then, my light landed on something else, deeper in the darkness. Two wide, unblinking eyes stared back, reflecting the phone's beam like an animal caught in headlights. Before my brain could even process what I was seeing, a figure lunged out of the darkness. A hand, surprisingly strong and cold, clamped over my mouth, suffocating any scream. I was yanked forward, dragged into the suffocating blackness. Panic seized me. I thrashed wildly, trying to kick and squirm, but the grip on me was relentless. The air was thick with that sickening sweet smell, and something else, a faint, unwashed odor. I bit down hard on the hand over my mouth, tasting something metallic and foul. The attacker grunted, a low, guttural sound, and for a split second, their grip loosened. That was all I needed. I kicked out with all my strength, my foot connecting with something soft and yielding. I heard a sharp gasp of pain. I scrambled backward, half crawling, half stumbling, bursting out of that horrific space. I didn't look back. With every ounce of adrenaline fueling me, I lunged for the heavy bookshelf, shoving it with a desperate strength I didn't know I possessed. It scraped loudly across the floor, crashing back into place, barricading the hidden door. The thud echoed through the silent cabin. I didn't stop to think. My car keys were on the counter, next to my phone. I snatched them, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped them. I tore out of the cabin, the cold night air a shock against my skin, and fumbled to unlock my car. The engine roared to life, and I jammed it into reverse, tires spitting gravel as I sped down the long, winding dirt road, not daring to look in my rearview mirror until the cabin was a distant, dark silhouette. I drove until the road turned paved, until I saw the first streetlights of the nearest town, and pulled over, shaking uncontrollably, to call 911. The police arrived quickly, their flashing blue lights a stark contrast to the quiet darkness of the rural road. I babbled out my story, my voice hoarse and high-pitched. They took me seriously, thankfully, and a patrol car headed to the Airbnb while I waited in a warm, brightly lit diner. A grim-faced officer called me an hour later. They had found the hidden room. Inside, they discovered a crude, makeshift living space, a soiled mattress on the floor, empty food wrappers, and disturbing personal effects. Among them, chillingly, was a photo of me, taken discreetly from a distance, stuck to the wall with masking tape. My stomach churned. Martha, the host, was questioned. She claimed no knowledge of the hidden room, but the police noted inconsistencies in her story. Later, a detective told me that the person living in the wall was a former tenant, a relative of Martha's, who had been evicted months ago but had secretly returned. He had been living there for weeks, silently observing everyone who rented the cabin, coming and going under the cover of night. He had a history of mental instability and had grown increasingly agitated. The police never caught him. He simply vanished into the sprawling wilderness. I still wake up in a cold sweat sometimes, reliving the moment those eyes met mine in the darkness. Every creak of my apartment building, every shadow that passes my window, makes my heart pound. I sold my car, bought a new phone, even moved to a new apartment. But the cold realization remains. Someone was living in my walls, watching me, waiting. And he's still out there. That night, the rain was coming down hard, and I was all alone in the old St. Jude's hospital. Not because I have a thing for creepy places, but because my friend Jeff, an amateur photographer, had insisted I come with him to shoot some beauty in decay. He couldn't make it last minute, but I'd already promised a few urban explorers from an online forum that I'd meet them there that evening, so I just bit the bullet and went. St. Jude's had been abandoned for over 20 years, and there were a lot of rumors about it, mostly boring ghost stories. But it definitely had that real, abandoned decay smell, damp, moldy, and a strange, unidentifiable metallic scent like rust. By the time I stepped inside the hospital's main entrance, it was completely dark. The beam of my flashlight danced across the derelict lobby, illuminating a scene of chaos. Overturned wheelchairs, scattered medical files, and windows rattling in the wind. I called out a few hello. Is anyone here? But only my echo reverberated through the corridors. Where were the people I was supposed to meet? They should have been here before me. I tried to text them, but the signal here was terrible, so my messages wouldn't go through. An unsettling feeling started to creep in, like I was a fool for being left here. I decided to wait a bit longer. Maybe they just got lost. I found a relatively clean corner in the lobby and sat down, leaning against the cold wall. The rain lashed against the windows, occasionally punctuated by strange noises. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but soon I heard a regular dragging sound, like someone pulling something heavy across the floor. It was faint, but in this dead silent environment, it was exceptionally clear. I held my breath, my flashlight clutched tightly in my hand. The sound got closer, seeming to come from the second floor, directly above me. I shone my light upwards. The dark staircase was eerily silent, nothing there. But the dragging sound didn't stop. Instead, it seemed to be deliberately toying with me, stopping and starting. My heart started to pound, an adrenaline surge prickling up my spine. I stopped waiting and decided to go up to the second floor. Every step I took sounded incredibly loud, as if the entire building was mocking my recklessness. When I reached the second floor hallway, the dragging sound suddenly stopped. I slowly moved forward, flashlight in hand, the beam sweeping across one abandoned patient room after another. One of the doors was slightly ajar, and I saw fresh scratches on the doorframe, as if something sharp had gouged them. I hesitated for a moment, but pushed the door open. The room was empty, but on the wall directly opposite the door, a phrase was clearly etched. It looked like it had been carved with something sharp, the lines deep, even oozing a bit of rusty-looking color, like dried blood. "What did you see?" I recoiled in fear, almost dropping my flashlight. This was definitely not a prank from those foreign people. I spun around, about to run, when I heard a faint metallic scraping sound behind me. My reflexes kicked in, and I swung my flashlight towards the sound. At the edge of the beam, I saw a dark figure quickly dart into an adjacent room. I clearly saw it was a person, tall and thin, wearing a worn-out coat, and they seemed to be holding something that, for a split second as the light hit it, reflected a faint metallic glint. I completely lost it, let out a scream, and turned to run down the stairs. I heard hurried footsteps behind me. They were chasing me. I bolted down the stairs, through the lobby, and straight for the main door, heedless of anything. My flashlight flew out of my hand in my panic, and I fumbled in the dark, bursting through the main entrance and into the pouring rain. I didn't even look back, just ran wildly until I saw the occasional headlights of cars on the road in the distance, feeling temporarily safe. I flagged down a passing taxi. The driver, seeing me drenched and pale, didn't ask any questions and just drove me home. Once I was home, I called the police. They came and listened to my story, but they didn't seem to believe me much. They said they didn't find anything at the hospital, no signs of other intruders. They just took a perfunctory report and advised me not to go to such dangerous places again. I certainly wouldn't. That night's experience was etched into my mind like a nightmare. A few days later, I saw a news report online. The headline was about the arrest of a serial burglar who specifically targeted isolated or abandoned buildings. The report included a photo of the suspect, a gaunt face, sickly pale, holding a crowbar used for breaking in. My stomach lurched. That was the face, that was the crowbar. I had seen him that night in the hospital. The report also mentioned that this person had a habit of carving words inside the target buildings before his crimes, usually some inexplicable questions. A chill ran down my spine. "That, what did you see?" echoed in my ears again. I don't know if he actually saw me, and I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't escaped in time. But I do know that in that abandoned hospital on that rainy night, I almost became his next creation. This happened a few years ago in late autumn. I can't quite pinpoint the exact year, but I remember I just graduated from university and was interning at a small company, working like a dog, far beyond what any intern should. That night was particularly insane. We had a project deadline looming, and I finally dragged myself out of the office past 1 in the morning. Even in Singapore, the air in this season is usually humid and warm, but that night it was unusually heavy and dark. I could smell the damp earth, like a storm was brewing and could burst any minute. My apartment wasn't far from the office, about a 30-minute walk. To save money, I always walked home, no matter how late. The streets were almost deserted, save for a few taxis that would zip by, stirring up a cold gust of wind. The streetlights cast a dim, yellowish glow, struggling to illuminate the path ahead, only succeeding in making the surrounding darkness feel even more profound. My phone had died hours ago, the screen a blank, dark rectangle. I just relied on memory and instinct, moving mechanically forward. As I walked down a secluded path I usually took, my eyes caught a black car parked by the roadside. Its windows were rolled up, and the car was mostly swallowed by the night, parked far from the nearest streetlight, almost completely hidden in the shadows. I didn't think much of it then, assuming it was just a resident who got home late and parked there. After all, parking in these older neighborhoods was always a nightmare. I kept walking, mentally planning whether to shower first or just collapse into bed. But after a few steps, a strange impulse made me glance back. In that instant, the car's headlights flickered on, then immediately off. It was so quick, on and off, as if someone had accidentally brushed a switch. My heart skipped a beat, but I quickly rationalized it away. Maybe the driver was inside waiting for someone and hit the switch by mistake. It wasn't a very convincing explanation, but I was so exhausted all I wanted was to get home. So I just quickened my pace. After about 5 more minutes, that feeling of being watched intensified. I started hearing footsteps behind me. I thought it was my imagination. Surely, no one would be on this road so late. But I couldn't help but look back again. Nothing. The road was empty. Yet, the footsteps continued, steadily pacing behind me, clear as day. My scalp began to tingle. This was no imagination. I could even hear the rustle of those footsteps on the damp fallen leaves by the side of the road. The sound was like an invisible rope, slowly tightening around my neck. I could feel it getting closer, closer, each step landing squarely on my nerves. I kept muttering to myself, almost home, almost home. I gripped my apartment keys tightly in my hand, my nails digging into my palm, the cold metal leaving deep marks, providing a flimsy sense of security. Finally, I was practically running as I reached my apartment building. Breathing heavily, I fumbled for my keys, ready to open the door. Just as I inserted the key into the lock and was about to turn it, the footsteps behind me suddenly stopped, abruptly, as if the person had vanished into thin air. I didn't dare turn around. My hands trembled violently, the key almost missing the keyhole. My breathing grew shallow and ragged, my mind a complete blank. In that critical moment, a cold, sweaty breath suddenly brushed against the back of my ear. I could even feel the person's warm breath. Then a low, hoarse voice, laced with a strange excitement and morbid gentleness, whispered clearly in my ear. "Why the rush? We're just getting started." Terror seized me. My keys clattered to the ground with a clink, rolling into a dark corner. The person grabbed my arm with immense force, like an iron vice. I felt my bones about to shatter. An intense pain shot from my arm, instantly spreading through my entire body. I struggled desperately, my body writhing like a fish out of water, trying to break free from his grip. But he remained still, rooted to the ground like a statue, making all my resistance seem so futile. My throat constricted with overwhelming fear. I wanted to scream, but no sound would come out. In my desperation, a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. I mustered all my strength, lifted my leg, and kicked him hard in the shin. He grunted in pain, evidently not expecting my resistance, and his grip momentarily loosened. I seized this fleeting opportunity, breaking free with the fastest movement I'd ever made. I didn't bother picking up my keys, or even thinking about the apartment door so close by. Like a madwoman, I bolted into the apartment complex, towards the nearest stairwell. As I burst through the building door, I slammed it shut behind me with a loud bang. Then, I leaned all my weight against it, listening to the muffled thuds and crashes against the door from outside. The sounds grew louder, as if the door would give way any second. I could even hear his low, furious curses, mixed with his heavy breathing. I didn't know if he would actually break in, or if he would just wait outside, like a patient predator. I huddled in the stairwell, hugging myself tightly, curled into a ball. I stayed there all night, until the first rays of dawn and the sound of my neighbor leaving for work finally gave me the courage to timidly crawl out and cautiously make my way home. The next day, I found the building's CCTV cameras were broken, and the security camera at the entrance had been deliberately damaged. The police came, did a perfunctory investigation, but found nothing. They just said it was probably a drunk or a prank. The mysterious black car had also vanished without a trace, as if it had never been there. Since that night, I've never dared to walk that path again. Every time I come home at night, I'm on edge, always feeling as if there's a pair of eyes watching me from the darkness. That feeling of being pursued, of being watched, clings to me like a parasite. Even though I've since moved, changed cities, and even changed my phone number, that cold breath, that hoarse voice, and that dark car still echo clearly in my mind, even now, when I'm most tired and vulnerable. It's like a curse, a constant reminder of everything that happened that night. I don't know who that person was, or what they wanted, or if they're still out there looking for new prey. That unknown, that helpless fear, is more terrifying than any ghost because it was real, and it could still happen again.